So repentance, or rethinking our worldview, our understanding of how things are meant to work, is all linked inseparably with faith, the story that we believe about how to save the world. I grew up as an American. I was taught and understood that the American system was the outworkings of the Christian worldview, and that was meant to be the way the world was going to be saved. When you grow up and you understand that America doesn't have the answers to what's going on in the world and they can't solve the problems, then you begin to realize that you've got to look elsewhere, and that elsewhere is the story concerning Jesus and his paradoxical enthronement over the world. When you see that, you begin to understand that that story that was told to Israel for so many centuries, that has shaped the people that they are today, you begin to realize that story wasn't meant to end strictly with a blessing for Abraham and his seed, but Abraham's seed was meant always to extend that blessing to the rest of the world. That is what took place in Jesus, when he died on a cross and then was resurrected 3 days later, and the Jewish men who were surrounding him and believed that he was the Messiah that they'd been waiting for all these generations, then they took that message to the rest of the world, and Israel was expanded, so to speak, in order to include all nations, as was promised to Abraham when he began back in Genesis chapter 12. So I want you to understand that if we are going to get our minds around repentance, we've got to understand that repentance causes us to see things differently. Jesus talked about the eye being the lamp of the body, and if the eye is good, then the lamp is full of light, the body's full of light. But if the eye is bad, then of course that's such a deep darkness. How can you possibly even rescue someone from that kind of darkness? I believe that repentance, the word repentance, meaning to rethink the way we see and understand our world, is the good eye that Jesus was talking about. He's looking for a new way of looking at the world. That was not only true of everyone outside of Israel, it was also true, as Jesus said, even to Israel themselves. So the humanity as a whole had to rethink the way they saw things. And that rethinking process is not something that takes one time for all time. It sets us on a new course. But that new course has to be constantly rethought, because we've been shaped so much by the stories into which we were born, the nations into which we were born. And so coming to repentance and coming to rethink the way we see the world will cause us to rethink the way we see things the rest of our lives. That's the reason why it's not a one-time event, but there is a critical moment when someone sees and understands what God is saying about how to save the world, and they rethink the stories into which they were born, or the stories which they've previously adopted as their way of understanding how to rescue or save the world from the trouble that it's in. I believe that America has proved that they don't have the ability to really truly rescue the world. Now, that's not a slam on America any more than it was any other kingdom or government that went before them. No human government has the answers to what's wrong with the world. And that's the reason why repentance, or this rethinking of the world, is linked inseparably to the new birth, which I believe is just an ancient way of talking about the naturalization process. We were born into, say, America, like I was. But when I rethink the world and come to understand the story of Israel as it's worked itself out in Jesus, I began to see another way of rescuing the world, and I want to be part of that world, which means I need to be naturalized into that world. And we'll link repentance and the new birth in a future video and talk about that. But I hope that you're encouraged by this. I hope that it'll help you to understand what repentance is, and that we'll be able to then move forward more productively in discussions about how we see and think the world ought to work. My channel is Stifling Jesus, and I believe that Jesus has been stifled because American Christianity, at least, has not insisted that Americans rethink their position. Instead, they just called them to be sorry for some things along the way, and that stifled the influence Jesus was meant to have on the world. Please join me on this journey. Thank you.